The iPhone 14 Pro Max comes with a new chip. It has what Apple calls the biggest camera upgrade ever on an iPhone. It introduces Dynamic Island and it has a new display. But how does it compare with the unique and extremely versatile Samsung Z Fold 4? We're going to talk about what's good, what's bad. Durability is going to be a major factor here, and so are the ergonomics. And finally, we'll get to which one you should spend your hard-earned money on. And speaking of money, the iPhone 14 Pro Max is the most expensive iPhone that you can buy, still starting out at $1,100 versus a whopping $1,800 for the Z Fold 4. Now, you're actually getting 4 times the amount of storage on the Z Fold 4, but we'll get to that later on. So let's cover the specs and the features and then talk about how they relate to real-life use. From a design standpoint, these two phones couldn't be any more different. The iPhone 14 Pro Max is the largest phone that Apple makes, yet the overall shape has essentially stayed the same over the past few years. Sure, we're getting slightly smaller bezels and a more pronounced camera system, but those are things that the average user wouldn't really notice. We're still getting the same rounded corners, the same beautiful stainless steel flat edges that frustratingly seem to pick up every single fingerprint, and finally we have the same beautiful matte back. This year I chose to go with deep purple, and it was absolutely the right choice. What I gather from this consistency in design is that Apple is happy with where they are, and while there's nothing new that just jumps out at you aesthetically, it does provide a level of consistency in terms of user experience that Apple seems to really value. With the Z Fold 4, Samsung took an existing design and then made a few small refinements. So again, we're getting slightly smaller bezels, the hinge design was updated and is now a bit slimmer, and the phone is slightly shorter, thinner, and lighter than the previous Fold. Again, I love the green-gray color, and I'm super happy to see more of these non-traditional colors being offered by both brands. Now, I mentioned ergonomics earlier on, and I think it's a critical consideration in this case. The size of the iPhone 14 Pro Max can be a huge plus because of the 6.7-inch display, but it could also be uncomfortable to use with one hand, especially if you have smaller hands. The Z Fold 4 is a bit of a mixed bag. We're getting a smaller, narrower 6.2-inch cover display, so you're more easily able to use it with one hand, but it almost feels twice as thick, and that's definitely something that you need to get used to. Once you open it up and start using the 7.6-inch main display, then you're pretty much committed to using both hands and you're good to go. I definitely recommend that you consider going to a store and playing around with both devices before making your choice. If you usually text with one hand, try that out. If you carry your phone in your back pocket, see how that feels. Oh, and by the way, put it back. Essentially, if you're not coming from a similar phone, make sure that you're choosing something that feels good in your hand and works for how you use your phone. As far as biometric authentication, the Z Fold 4 offers a fingerprint sensor which is integrated into the power button, and both phones offer facial recognition, but the iPhone's Face ID is more secure. Ultimately, it comes down to what you prefer. Some users prefer to securely authenticate using their finger when the phone is off to the side. My personal preference on a phone is facial recognition, so I would choose the iPhone, which has the more secure implementation. Now, before we get to the camera system and take a deeper look at the displays, let's talk about durability because there could be some real deal breakers here. So Samsung incorporated their strongest aluminum armor frame to date with the Z Fold 4, and it features Gorilla Glass Victus Plus on the back and the cover display. The interior of the Z Fold 4, however, doesn't use this more durable glass. In contrast, the front and the back of the iPhone 14 Pro Max use ceramic shield, which Apple claims to be tougher than any other smartphone glass. Beyond the glass, the iPhone 14 Pro Max has an IP68 rating, so it's protected against water and dust, whereas the Z Fold 4 has an IPX8 rating, so while you don't have to worry about water, you don't have protection from dust. And this could be a real deal breaker for some users. I've had the Z Fold 3 since the day it was released, and the same with the Z Fold 4, and I haven't had any issues with them. But I have found myself to be much more conscious about where I put my phone. With the iPhone, that's just not something that ever crosses my mind, and as an extra level of protection, I keep both of them in a case, which unfortunately has had a negative impact on my charging experience, and more on this later. So overall, this is an easy win for the iPhone 14 Pro Max. It has better protection, there are no hinges or moving parts, there's no folding display, so it's a much simpler device to make durable. Now, both phones received significant upgrades to the camera system, so let's see how this pans out. The Fold 4 has a 50 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 10 megapixel telephoto with a 3x optical zoom. We're also getting two selfie cameras, a 4 megapixel under display and then a 10 megapixel one on the outer display. Now, this is quite an improvement over the Z Fold 3, and together with a more powerful chip and upgrades to image processing, the Z Fold 4 does have a flagship level camera system other than the under display camera, which I would pretty much never use. The Fold has very good noise reduction in low light, it can shoot 8K video and 24 frames per second, and you're able to use the main camera for selfies and vlogging while using the outer display for preview. The iPhone 14 Pro Max has a brand new and super impressive 48 megapixel main camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, a 12 megapixel telephoto with a 3x optical zoom, and finally we have a 12 megapixel selfie camera. It's also important to understand that hardware and specs are only part of the story, and the image processing done by the software is just as important, and some might argue more important. Samsung continues to improve their image processing while Apple released their second generation of Deep Fusion, which they call Photonic Engine. It applies Deep Fusion earlier on in the processor before the images are compressed, and this means that there's more information to work with and the images are even better. There is of course an element of personal preference when it comes to images, things like how much saturation you like or how much skin smoothing, and in this case it's a bit of an unfair comparison because the Z Fold 4 doesn't even have the best camera system Samsung has to offer, whereas the iPhone 14 Pro Max is newer, is clearly the most powerful camera system in any iPhone. It beats out the Z Fold 4, and I'm working on a detailed comparison with the S22 Ultra. Now, the Z Fold 4 has a Super AMOLED 2X display with support for HDR10+, 120Hz adaptive refresh rate. We're getting a resolution of 1812 by 2176, a pixel density of 373. The iPhone 14 Pro Max has a Super Retina XDR display with HDR10 and Dolby Vision support. We're getting a resolution of 1290 by 2796, a higher pixel density of 460 pixels per inch. When it comes to brightness, we have 1000 nits of typical brightness, 1600 nits of peak brightness for HDR content, and 2000 nits peak brightness when outdoors. And that's the brightest display on any phone. If I was looking for the best quality display, that would be the iPhone 14 Pro Max. But it's also important to think about the aspect ratio and what you plan on doing with your phone. When you interact with the Z Fold 4, the display definitely looks and feels bigger than the one on the iPhone because of the more square dimensions. So you're able to see more on the screen at once. It's great as an e-reader, and it's fantastic for playing games and for multitasking. When watching content, the larger display on the Fold does give you a bigger overall image when compared to the iPhone, but the more square aspect ratio means that you're getting larger letterboxing or black bars. The other option is to stretch the image so that it fills the screen, at which point the Z Fold 4 does a pretty heavy crop on the left and right sides of the image. We are getting a more uninterrupted view with the Z Fold 4 because of the under display camera, which is not completely invisible if you look for it, but it truly fades away when you're actually using the phone. The iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max no longer have a notch, and now use Apple's new dynamic island. It's a clever way to combine software with two smaller hardware elements and create a useful, animated, and interactive user experience. This area allows you to fluidly interact with the background app, alerts, and notifications without having to leave the app that you're using. Now, the speakers on both phones are actually quite good for mobile devices. They get plenty loud and will definitely work for you when you're watching movies or listening to music without headphones. When we look more closely at multitasking, things definitely shift in favor of the Z Fold 4. The combination of the display size and the software allows you to run two apps side by side with plenty of room for each app. You can also tile in a third app if you need to, and then even a fourth one in a pop-up window. When you want to do even more, you can use DeX, connect the Z Fold 4 to a keyboard, a mouse, and an external display, and they get more of a desktop-like user experience with a powerful dual display setup. The Z Fold 4 also offers S Pen support, and you can use this optional accessory to take notes, to draw, and to sign documents on the go. Looking at the operating systems, we can see that iOS and Android/One UI philosophically take vastly different approaches. With the Z Fold 4, you're getting an operating system that's a lot more customizable. There's a really useful side menu. You can see more apps at once on your home screen. We're getting the new taskbar at the bottom, and you have a lot more control over the various aspects of the user experience. By comparison, iOS is simpler and easier to use. There's a certain overlap with iPadOS. Apple added a number of nice new features with iOS 16, and in general, the apps are better optimized. You're also getting outstanding operating support from Apple, and although Samsung does offer 4 years of OS updates and 5 years of security updates, the iPhone will still receive updates for longer. The updates seem to come quicker, and they're released at the same time for all iPhone users. Ultimately, if you like to tinker around and you want to get things exactly how you want them, if you want better multitasking, S Pen support, and the ability to get more of a laptop or desktop-like user experience, the Z Fold 4 is absolutely the way to go. If you're the type of user who values simplicity, you don't really want to mess around with settings and options too much, both phones will work for you, but iOS is probably a better option and your phone will be supported for longer. Now, both phones received new chips this year, so let's look at the specs and talk about real-life use. The Z Fold 4 features the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chip. It comes with 12 gigs of RAM and between 256 gigabytes and 1 terabyte of storage. The iPhone 14 Pro Max is rocking the new A16 Bionic, 6 gigabytes of RAM, and it's available between 128 gigabytes and 1 terabyte of storage. Now, looking at benchmarks, the iPhone is well ahead in both single and multi-core performance. But the real question is, will this impact your everyday use? And the answer is maybe. Now, both phones are quite powerful, so the vast majority of everyday activities, things like browsing the web, going to social media, watching video, texting, and working with email. For those types of things, I've experienced no noticeable lag and the phones feel very responsive. The iPhone camera does feel more snappy, and we'll cover gaming later on after we talk about battery life. So in terms of overall performance, I'm going to give the edge to the iPhone because it has a more powerful chip, and the additional headroom in terms of performance could become more significant as time goes on. Now, the truth is that performance in a mobile device is pretty meaningless without efficiency, and I was glad to see that Samsung improved the battery life on the Z Fold 4. We're actually getting the same size battery as the previous model, so 4,400 milliamp hour, but the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chip is more efficient. That has had a very positive effect on battery life, and now I'm getting somewhere around 7 to 8 hours of screen on time. Now, the iPhone battery is actually a bit smaller in capacity, so 4,323 milliamp hour. And even with the new always on display, I found it to outperform the Fold by 2 to 3 hours for very similar use. Now, personally, I almost never go that long without having the opportunity to charge my phone at my desk, in the studio, or in my car. So it hasn't translated into a significant practical advantage for me, but there's no question that I give the iPhone 14 Pro Max the edge. The Fold 4 does charge a bit faster, around an hour and 25 minutes versus about an hour and 40 minutes on the iPhone, and both phones offer 15 watts wireless charging. One frustrating thing about the Fold 4 is that the $90 Samsung case with the S Pen combo doesn't allow me to wirelessly charge my phone because the S Pen lifts the phone off the charger. And the Fold does offer reverse wireless charging, which I don't use a lot, but when I'm in a bind, it's a fantastic feature to have. So ultimately, the iPhone has superior battery life while the Fold has slightly faster charging and reverse wireless charging. So this is an area where you're going to need to choose what you value more. Now, if you play games on your phone, then battery life is absolutely critical. I played all my favorite games on both phones, so games like Asphalt, Genshin Impact, and PUBG, and these new and more powerful chips absolutely crushed it. Graphics looked amazing, gameplay was very smooth and virtually lag-free, and both devices did get fairly hot when I played for longer periods of time. And when playing PUBG, both phones can go up to HDR for graphics with extreme frame rate, or Ultra HD for graphics with Ultra for frame rate. I usually play on balanced and extreme in order to get a good combination of gameplay experience and battery performance. Both phones were really great to game on. And the Z Fold 4 has better ergonomics because it's larger, and of course everything looks better, which is more fun. In both cases, you can also connect an Xbox controller and then stream games using the Xbox Game Pass app. And again, the Fold comes out ahead because of the larger display. Now, both companies are offering fairly aggressive trade-in options, which is great news for you. And you can actually double your storage for free on the Fold right now using the links in the description. So ultimately, which one would I choose? Now, the Z Fold 4 has a larger display. It's a great productivity tool. It's a lot of fun to game on. It offers an excellent overall user experience when you're using the main display. It has reverse wireless charging, and it's definitely one of my favorite folding devices. The iPhone 14 Pro Max has the best features that Apple has to offer: a more powerful chip, an incredibly powerful camera system, better battery life, it's more durable, which is likely to be a deciding factor for a lot of users, and it has a brighter and better quality display. If it's too big in terms of ergonomics, you can actually get an identical feature set on the iPhone 14 Pro. It's a lot less expensive, and ultimately I think it's probably a better fit for most users. Now you should see how the Z Fold 4 compares with the S21 Ultra. Click on my face to subscribe. You know what I always say, buy it nice or buy it twice. Good luck and see you soon.